Kengan is the ultimate fighting series and has my favorite fight in all of anime and manga. Therefore, today I'll be ranking close to 100 fights throughout the Kengan Ashura and Kengan Omega manga from worst to best, reliving the greatness provided in all of them, and hopefully you enjoy today's tier list. First up here, this is Koga around chapter 48 to chapter 50 of Kengan Omega, where he's protecting Yamashita from the worm goons. This is more so where we first get to see him use the fist eye. So pretty cool fight. I think it's like a C tier. Galang vs Carlos. At the time, mostly due to the ending with the ring out being a factor, people were like hating this fight to quite a wild degree. But on reflection, I think it was pretty good. I think it was one of the better ones in the Purgatory arc, so I'll say it's a B tier. Rito vs Falcon, I think that has the opportunity of being maybe the best fight in the entire Kengan vs Purgatory tournament. So if it is the best fight, I can maybe put it in A tier. I think that's fair. It's not like I like Falcon or Rito that much as characters, I just think it's the best fight. Toa vs Julius was absolutely goated. I do think it's better than Carlos vs Galang. The Julius evolution got Tota was type. The art at the start of their clash was absolutely goated as well. One of the most intense introductions, so I think that's a worthy B tier. Misasa vs Yumi, the battle between the Fangs. That fight, featuring an odd rule set for kinda no reason, was a little whack. Misasa beating up Yumi was quite hype, I will say. So I think it's worthy of B tier. Probably rank it after those two, but I think it's worthy. I feel as though a lot of the Purgatory versus Kengan fights are going to be around the same tier. Like Naden versus Ruki has probably the most narrative importance out of any fight, but the fight alone probably enjoyed less than the other two, so I'll say C tier. Lutien vs Kano I think was absolute hype. The evolution of Kano we see defeating the inner demon, the Lutien flashback, the insanity of him having Guhan as well and going mental, the dragon shot at the end. I think that's probably top of B so far. Kure Ryan vs Alan Wu. So moment alone, like S tier. Fight, it's like an E tier. It wasn't really even a fight. If this was like a best moment tier list, this is like S tier. Potentially like, you know, top 5 of all time in Kengan. But as a fight, it was just a, you know, a moment. It wasn't really a fight. Jaime vs Dorota. So this fight had a lot of strange issues. I kind of enjoyed it though. I feel as though a lot of people disagree with me and rank it in the B tier along these guys. I do think it was better than Naden vs Roki, so in a sense it has to go higher than that, but I prefer these other fights over it, I'll say. Okoya vs Nicholas was absolutely insane, but the way it ended with Lolong kinda beating both of them up and like him getting set up more so from that fight kinda took away from it for me. So I'll say C tier. It was a bit wacky. I do think these are all better than it, so I'll put it down in C tier. Nitoku vs Ludong. I think that's the fight outside of Falcon vs Rito people rate as the best on average. Personally, I think it was good. Probably the top of B. I do think Falcon Rito was more so my preferred fight. I think it's a little bit of a step above. Okubo versus Tarashi, by far the worst fight in the tournament. Tarashi, the most wasted trash in all of existence. Don't know why he was made into a character for a tournament like this. And Okubo is just the ultimate clown, as we saw, so E tier. Wakazuki vs Faye. When it comes to hype alone and the insanity we got with that fight, I think that's an A tier. Yes, there's issues, but the art we got for that, particularly when Faye pulled out the Divine Demon, and reading this span of chapters weekly was probably unmatched in the whole tournament, I'll say. So I will put it in A tier. I'll say objectively Falcon vs Rito is a better fight, but this one had more hype and better moments. But since this is a fight tier list, I'll put it like that. Oma vs Lolong, the final fight of the tournament, had issues, wasn't the worst. Feels like people hated on it more than what they should have. Seeing Oma now have Kure Clan techniques and also advanced Nico style stuff, such as one of his master's techniques from back in Ashura's flashback was cool. The advanced using in quick blitzes was cool. I don't think it's A tier. I think it's like a B tier fight. Probably around here. Lolong, while having a very simple fighting style, not exactly what people wanted, I still think was pretty solid. This is Edward versus Kure Irio. So I'm gonna assume this is Edward versus the Kure clan, not just that one battle. I think you have to put that in A tier. Like, that span of chapters, we have Edward fighting Kure Irio, the other head of the Wukan of the main branch. Then we have the spares getting beat up, the other Kure clan members has come. We have Kure Ryan fight as well, everyone getting destroyed by Edward. The highest tier of strength we've ever seen at that point. Yes, the ending was disappointing, but that was partly due to people not understanding that the stabbing on Edward did in fact poison him and weaken him to a wild extent, which is later confirmed in his character profile to those of you who didn't realize that. So it all makes sense of what we got. A hype fight. I think it's A tier. So this is Koga post flashback against the, what's that guy's name? Conqueror or whatever. I don't remember much from it, so has to go on E tier, I guess. If I don't remember much of it, can't be that good. E tier. I think Koga vs ZG had way more impact. It was a big stepping stone in the story, so I will rate it here. I rate it above Koga's fight against the worm. It was cool to see. The crescent moon kick was quite sick. Koga versus this random goon for the Berserker tournament has to go on E. Barely remember what happened. I think that guy kind of had a technique that was like Oma's indestructible. This one is Himuro versus Kono Haruro. The one on par with Legends. I'll put this as my first in E tier. That was quite an interesting fight, I'll say. A bit wacky, but it was something. Haruro has like, fat man aura. Everyone wanted him to, lean out and come back to his old legend before he became the representation of Nintendo in the manga. But bro kind of fell off. And then Himuro is like the icy aura farmer that always gets destroyed when he actually gets a fight against someone kind of capable. But I think it was pretty cool. This one, I can't quite tell what it is, but I think it's Akoya versus Lutien in the sewers. So we didn't really get much from that fight. I think Okoya using the flashlight was kinda goated. And since I'm now on the Okoya hype train, I'm no longer believing in his death. It's justice and justice forever. I think he has to go in D tier as well. Bro will forever be him. That's a guarantee now. This is Garuki versus the copy guy. What's his name? Chiba, whatever. Shiba. He, I believe, was using a combination of like Kano's Formless and Lolong Sulat. So bro was going crazy in that fight. But again, it was kinda a nothing fight. All things considered. Pretty much a nothing. We talked about this earlier on the stream. We had Cosmo versus Sorpang. Cosmo's kinda main fight throughout all of Ashura. I think this one, while being very short, was definitely one of the most hype and unexpected, crazy twist turn of events we've ever gotten. So I think it's worthy of B. I think it is much shorter than all the Purgatory fights. So in that sense, considering we didn't get much from it, I'll put it at the end, but it was quite sick. This is Rito versus, what's this guy, Michael Myers or whatever you want to call him. This is reconfirming the evolution of Rito. It wasn't amazing, but I think it was a cool fight. The art was pretty solid. I think most people enjoyed it who read it. Fairly short fight, I believe, but Rito's rise and evolution has been great to see throughout. Rito has definitely got one of the biggest rises and most justice throughout Omega, I'll say. This is Koga versus that other supernova dude. This one was more of a fight from my memory. We had some grappling exchanges as well. I don't think it's quite an E tier. I think it's like a D tier fight as well. This was Adam versus Roki. Quite a goated fight. Seeing Adam beat up Roki was quite goated, I'll say. I'll put it in a C tier. Roki at that point was quite unhinged. And the rise of Adam, seeing his evolution in him, beating down Roki was great. So I think it's C tier. I think it's better than Koga versus EG, but I preferred like Naden versus Roki and like Okoya versus Nicholas. This is Sorpang versus Rito. So an issue with this fight, Sorpang, you could say, was more injured, or his fight against Cosmo was closer, but this was like the definitive evolution of Rito. Like the culmination of his further training. So it was great in that regard. And that was kind of Rito's main fight in the tournament. I think it's C tier as well. I think similar to the before saying, it's like around here. I think the Purgatory vs Kengan fights are still better. Yeah, it is Koga vs Roki, okay. I thought it was, on reflection. I thought it was the person Ray took out to get in Kengan Ashura. But I was thinking, did Koga actually fight that guy? Koga vs Roki. Definitely one of the better ones of the Berserker Bowl. I think Sorpang vs Cosmo was better though. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Then Rito vs Koga was a nothing fight at the end, so E tier. Okubo vs Sorpang, where the legend himself, Segabahashi. I said Okubo vs Sorpang, didn't I? Segabahashi vs Okubo, where the almighty Seki destroyed the clown, chucked him in the ground. Absolute dub of the fight. Potentially the best we've gotten in all of Kengan. Solidified S tier. I think we all know why. Can't be disproven or argued against. Segabahashi is simply him. This is Retsudo the son of Metsudo versus Random Wormgoon. Can't remember much from it. It was kind of cool from this panel alone, but can't remember, can't be that good. E tier. Similar thing here with Ray, also a nothing fight per se, can't remember much from it. Garmu Kaku versus like Koga, Ohm and all that. It was quite brief, like not much happened. Koga almost died in a sense, so in that sense it was cool. So I'll say it's like a D tier. Similar to like a Koya, Lutien. It's like a nothing fight per se, but very cool for something we don't really get too much. Garmu Kaku versus Shen Wulong. A much different fight to anything else we've really seen. Garmu Kaku with all that planning and Shen Wulong being him. I think that's like an A tier. Yeah, I think it's A tier. Has its issues, but I think it was good. It was different. It wasn't like a regular martial arts tournament fight. But we got like 6 or so chapters dedicated to it. We had all the build-up required. So yeah, Garmu Kaku vs Shen Wulong is like an A tier. I think I preferred Edward vs the Kuroi clan. But yeah, I think that's fine. This one is... I'm not too sure. Is it Koga versus the monk dude? I can't remember it. So, E tier. This is Oma versus Kyozan. So for some reason, the only time Oma has used the ultimate technique of the Nico style, Demon's Bane, was against Kyozan. Don't know who decided that writing wise, but I guess Kyozan was pretty cool in that fight. So in that sense, I guess it was nice. I wouldn't rank it in B tier. I think it's like a C tier, all things considered. It's kind of a nothing fight. Probably the most forgettable from Oma so far in Omega. So I think it's like a C tier. Maybe a top of C, maybe not. Maybe like around here, I'll say. This is Kano Gito vs Dorota. Yep. It was meant to be a fight to decide who would be participating in the Real Champion tournament. And the winner of that was Dorota, so most of us assumed Dorota would be fighting and Kano wouldn't make it, but then Kano just made his way into that tournament regardless, and as we know, ended up winning that tournament as well. But coming back to this fight, I think it was great. I think B tier is fair. I think it was on the same caliber as Kengan vs Purgatory. Even better than a lot of them potentially. Anything could have really happened in like the final exchanges in it. Honestly, I would have at the top of B. Even though I like Kano more as a character, like to a much higher degree, I think it was a great and wild fight. Hatsumi-sen vs Canada. A bit of a nothing fight. It was cool seeing the evolution of pre-initiative, but Sen didn't do much as well. Canada, sometimes these fights are goated. This was more so average. I think it's like a C tier. It wasn't bad to any degree. Like similar to like Oma vs Kyozan range, I would say. That's on the tier list is pretty much Kuroki vs Shen Wulong. So for the sake of the Kuroki agenda, I think it was quite goated. But can't say it was the most goated. It was quite short. I'll say it's like a C tier as well. I will at the top of C tier because Kuroki is always him. I will rank the Real Champion tournament fights quickly as well. Galang vs Dorota, I think was hype. I would place that in like the B tier. Justin versus this dude, I think was like a nothing fight. I'll place it in the D tier. Julius vs. Kano didn't have much, but I think it's worthy of like low end of the C tier. Lo Long vs. this guy was a nothing fight. It's like a D tier. Galang vs. Justin, a similar sense, like a D tier, maybe C tier at most. Kano vs. Lo Long, I think is B tier. And then Kano vs. Galang is like low B tier, high C tier. Koga vs. Conqueror, it was like a street fight. I think it was impactful and pretty cool, so I'll put that in D. Rito vs. Mokinchi, I think is like a B tier. It was pretty good. The proper return of Rito. Conqueror vs. Roki, I think it was better than the Koga one. It's like around here. Still kind of nothing fight. This one's like a D tier as well. Actually, this one's like a E tier, and then Roki's one is like a D tier. This one's like an S tier, for obvious reasons. Akoya vs. Roki is definitely one of the better ones from early. I'll put that top of C tier. Tokuminchi on Nitoku versus that other dude. It's actually pretty good. I think that's like a C tier. Probably like around here. Something like that. Koga versus that dude. Kind of a nothing fight, but cool to set up the rise of Koga. Start of his journey. But now we can get into the Kengan Ashura ranking, where you're going to see in the difference in like caliber of fights. Soma's first fight, chapter 1, where Yamashita first became aware of the greatness of the Ashura, I think that's like a D tier. It's kind of a nothing fight. Not really much happened, so D tier. Oma versus the Russian boxer dude, E tier. Oma versus Rito, this is meant to be in D tier, is like a C tier fight. So like getting a bit better. Yeah, slipped into C. Meant to be in D, like around here or something. I think Oma vs. Rito, while the art was quite rough at that point in the story, I think it was pretty cool. Medicine Man vs. Oma, a fight that was cut from the Kengan Ashura anime, unfortunately. Likewise with the whole Medicine Man character. But regardless, I think Medicine Man is absolutely goated. One of the more unique fights. I think it was better than the Ryuto one. But can't put it higher than that. So, around that range. Oma vs. Segabahashi was a big step up. Oma first using the advance. Segabahashi being set up as a monster. The introduction of many top tier characters and set up for the Annihilation Tournament. Everyone remembers this fight for good reason. I think it's B. I'm not sure if it's high B or low B. I'll put it low B. I feel as though the Purgatory vs. Kengan fights are more not perfected, but like more easy to follow, more clear. So like a B tier. This is Rito versus that one dude. Not Rito, this is Ray versus that one dude where he defeated him to take his place in the tournament. This was also cut from the Kengan Ashura anime. It was like a 2 or half a chapter fight or something like that. It wasn't much. It was pretty hyped though, so I think D tier. We also had the whatever her name was, I kind of destroyed a guy, which was pretty cool. This one is Canada pulling up on Himuro in the street or in the boat where Himuro got done dirty. Low-key a goated fight. It wasn't long, so I can't really put it that high. I'll put it like around here. Which brings us to the Kengan Ashura Annihilation Tournament, where the best fights occur in all of Kengan Ashura. Or in all of Kengan, you can say. So, Adam Dudley versus Cosmo to start the tournament. I think it was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was the best, but I think it was worthy of like above Cosmo versus Sorpang, or like around that range. Akoya versus Karo, I think it was potentially even better. I think like a B tier as well. Ryan versus Mokinchi. Again, I may even consider that fight better as well than the previous two. Inaba versus Oma, I would say is on the lower end for round one for me. The anime kind of made it somewhat cooler, but I think it's not as good as those ones. Wakatsuki versus Gozo. For the anime, this fight was cut much shorter. The manga had more of an exchange and Gozo kind of doing something, but it was still pretty much a nothing fight. So it has to be like a D tier, I'll say. Soda versus Julius, again, pretty much a nothing fight. It's like a D tier. Meguro versus Mutaba, potentially the most insane fight to this day. Honestly, I think it's like there. That shit was wild. Absolutely wild. Kyozan vs Segabahashi, I think is an S tier. I think Kyozan vs Segabahashi is better than any Kengan vs Purgatory fight. And if you disagree, I guess rewatch it or reread it. Sorpang vs Karo the Fisherman, I think it was solid. Probably around here, I'll say. Ray vs Shiba, what's that? The quickest fight we've ever gotten in Kengan to this day. So I guess it has to go like here. Not really a fight, you can call it. Who is this one? Kuroki vs Rito. I guess that was more of an exchange. The start of the greatness of Kuroki. So I'll put that top of D. Nitoku vs Kiru Setsuna. Quite the menacing fight. I'll put that... yeah, I'll put that in C tier around there. Hatsumi Sen versus the copy dude. Kinda a nothing fight. Cool exchanges. The Aikido usage was pretty badass, but wasn't the most wild we've ever seen. Bando versus the Doctor Dude Hanafusa. Again, one of the strangest and most wild, but the unique factor definitely gives it an advantage. I think it's worthy of B tier. I think it's better than Oma vs Segabahashi. I think it's better than Inaba. I think it's better than that. Better than Karo. I'll leave it there. The bone stuff was quite something, I'll say. Gaolang vs Canada. I think it's many times better than Hatsumi vs Canada. So if that is in C, that has to go in B. I think it's better than that, better than that. Yeah, I think it's actually very good. I'll put it there. I think that's fair. Okubo vs Kano. One of the best grappling exchanges we've ever seen. I'll put that in top of B. Actually, I'll put it in low A. Probably the best grappling exchange fight we've ever seen outside of Oma and Cosmo. So I think that's an A tier. On to round 2. The best round in the entire Kengan franchise, I would say. Cosmo vs Akoya, I think is better than anything we've gotten in Omega outside of these two legendary battles. Oma vs Ryan is another fight in S tier. Most people should agree with that. Wakatsuki vs Julius. Honestly, another fight in S tier for me. Segabahashi vs Mutaba. I think that's better than Cosmo vs Akoya, but not quite S tier. Ray vs Sorpang. Again, I think it's better than Cosmo vs Akoya, better than Segabahashi, but not quite S tier. Kuroki vs Kiryu Setsuna. Honestly, one of my favorite fights. I think it's worthy of A tier. Above that again. Hatsumi vs Bando. Probably on the lower end, I will say. Probably more like bottom of A. Galang vs Kano. That is my second favorite fight of the entire series, so S tier. We got ourselves Personal Bodyguard versus the Hayami Goon. Quite brutal, quite short. I think it's like a B tier worthy. Cosmo vs Oma. First fight of round 3. I'll say top of B. Or actually I'll put it in A tier. I like it more than Okubo vs Kano. Yeah, I think that's fair. Wakatsuki vs Mutaba. I like that more than that. I like it more than that. Yep. Or I'll place it there. Maybe. Not sure. Close, close. We got Kuroki vs Ray. So, I think I prefer Kiryu vs Kuroki. But I also think I prefer Ray vs Sorpang. So with that, I'll say Kuroki vs Segabahashi goes here. I mean, yeah, Kuroki vs Ray, I mean. Kano vs Hatsumi Sen. A disappointing fight to many, but I think in its own right it was still goated. Probably lower on the A tier. Kiryu vs Oma outside of the arena. A lot of importance. Oma used Demon's Bane in this fight that a lot of people missed. It was quite wild. I think it's around here, I'll say. Yeah, I'll say that. Wakatsuki vs Oma. I think that's... Actually, I'll say that's another S tier. Wakatsuki vs Oma went incredibly hard. Kuroki vs Kano, I think, is still to this day the best fight in all of Kengan. I don't think much is really close. And then Oma vs Kuroki is probably in S tier. Around that. And then, as I broke down before, the real champion tournament fights are mostly in B tier. Falcon Rito is in A tier. I think it's potentially the best fight, like 1v1 fight in all of Omega. And then for the recent Nico vs Shen Wulong in Luhan is kind of like a C tier, nothing fight, or even D tier. But top 5, Kano vs Kuroki, Gaolang vs Kano, Oma vs Ryan, Oma vs Kuroki, Wakatsuki vs Julius. And there you go. The tier list of the majority of the main Kengan Ashura and Kengan Omega fights.